My parents gave my sister's family of 5 the keys to my house while I was getting coffee, then told me, "It's too big for one selfish person anyway." Mom added harshly, "She has children who actually need and deserve this space." Dad agreed, "Single people don't deserve big houses when families are struggling." Sister smirked arrogantly, finally living in the house I should have always had. When I demanded my keys back, Mom said coldly, "You'll get a nice little studio apartment instead, be grateful." Dad threatened, "Accept this generous arrangement or lose your family forever." I called my lawyer immediately. What they didn't know was that I'd been recording everything on my phone. I never thought I'd be posting one of these stories, but here we are. I'm Haley, 32, and I work as a software engineer for a major tech company. I've been single by choice for the past few years, focusing on my career and honestly enjoying my independence. About 2 years ago, I bought my dream house, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in an upscale neighborhood. I'd saved for years, worked overtime, and sacrificed a lot to afford it. It was my house, my sanctuary, and my biggest achievement. My family has always been complicated. My parents, Kathleen and Douglas, are in their late 50s and have always played favorites. My sister Brianna, 29, is the golden child who can do no wrong. She's married to Troy, and they have 3 kids, Natalie, 10, Owen, 6, and baby Maya, 18 months. Brianna has always been jealous of my success, constantly making snide comments about how lucky I am and how things just fall into my lap. The truth is, while she was partying through college and dropping out to get married young, I was grinding through a computer science degree and building my career. The problem started about 6 months ago when Brianna and Troy began having financial troubles. Troy lost his job, and they were struggling to make rent on their cramped 2-bedroom apartment. Instead of offering to help them get back on their feet, my parents kept dropping hints about how I had so much space going to waste and how I should think about family. I helped where I could. I bought groceries for them, paid for the kids' school supplies, and even covered a few utility bills. But apparently, that wasn't enough. 2 weeks ago, things escalated. My parents invited me to Sunday dinner, which should have been my first red flag since we hadn't done family dinners in months. The entire evening was spent with them lecturing me about my selfishness and how I needed to step up for family. My mom, Kathleen, kept going on about how the house was too big for one person and how I should consider letting Brianna's family move in temporarily. I shut that down immediately, explaining that I worked hard for my house and I wasn't running a charity. My dad, Douglas, got angry and started his usual guilt trip about family obligations and what would your grandmother think. I reminded him that Grandma Rose actually left me a small inheritance that helped with my down payment, and she'd be proud that I used it wisely. That seemed to shut him up, but I could see the wheels turning in their heads. Last Tuesday started like any other day. I was working from home, had a few calls scheduled, and around 10 a.m. decided to run to my favorite coffee shop about 15 minutes away. It's this little place that makes the most amazing lavender lattes, and I'd been craving one all morning. I grabbed my purse, my phone, and headed out, thinking I'd be back in 30 minutes tops. Here's where I made a crucial decision that would save my ass later. I've been having some issues with my family boundary stomping lately, so I'd started recording conversations when I was around them. That morning, I had my phone set to record audio because I'd been feeling increasingly anxious about potential confrontations with my family. I keep important documents, including copies of my mortgage papers, in my car's glove compartment as backup in case of emergencies or identity theft, a habit I picked up after a coworker had their house broken into and all their important papers stolen. I just forgot to turn off the recording when I left the house. When I got back from the coffee shop, I knew something was wrong immediately. There were 2 cars in my driveway that didn't belong there, Brianna's beat-up Honda and a U-Haul truck. My heart started racing, but I tried to stay calm. Maybe there was an emergency, maybe they needed help with something. I walked up to my front door and found it was locked, which was weird since I never lock it when I'm just running errands. I rang the doorbell to my own house, and Brianna answered. She had this smug look on her face that I'd never seen before, and she was holding baby Maya like she owned the place. "Oh, Haley. You're back early," she said, not moving from the doorway. "Early? What are you talking about? This is my house. Why are you here?" That's when my parents appeared behind her, looking guilty but defiant. My mom, Kathleen, stepped forward with this cold expression I'd never seen before. "Haley, we need to talk," she said. "We can talk, but first, why is there a U-Haul in my driveway and why are you all in my house?" My dad, Douglas, cleared his throat. "We've made a decision as a family. Brianna and Troy need this space more than you do. They have children who actually need and deserve this space." I stared at him, thinking I'd misheard. "Excuse me?" My mom jumped in, her voice harsh and matter-of-fact. "It's too big for one selfish person anyway. You've been hoarding this space while your sister's family has been cramped in that tiny apartment. It's not right." "Hoarding? I bought this house. I pay the mortgage. What are you talking about? Brianna stepped forward, and I swear she was practically glowing with satisfaction. Finally, I'm living in the house I should have always had. You've had your fun playing house, but it's time to think about family. I felt like I was in some kind of alternate reality. You should have always had? Brianna, you didn't buy this house. You didn't save for it. You didn't work overtime for 2 years to afford it. I did. My dad's face got red, the way it always did when he was about to lose his temper. Single people don't deserve big houses when families are struggling. You're being selfish and ungrateful. Ungrateful? For what? For buying my own house with my own money? That's when my mom delivered the line that still makes my blood boil. You'll get a nice little studio apartment instead. Be grateful we're even helping you find something. This arrangement is better for everyone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Arrangement? You mean stealing my house? My dad stepped closer, and his voice took on this threatening tone I'd never heard before. Accept this generous arrangement or lose your family forever. That's your choice, Haley. Be smart about this. The whole time, I could hear Troy in the background directing the kids to put their toys in what used to be my home office. Natalie was running around excited about her new room, and Owen was jumping on my furniture. It was surreal and infuriating. I want my keys back. Right now, I demanded. Brianna laughed, actually laughed, and said, "What keys? We changed the locks. This is our home now." That's when I snapped. You changed the locks? On my house? How did you even get in? My mom looked almost proud when she said, "We used your spare key from under the flower pot. We've been planning this for weeks." Planning this? You've been planning to steal my house? We've been planning to help your sister's family while teaching you a lesson about selfishness, my dad said. I pulled out my phone, and that's when I remembered it had been recording this entire time. I had been unconsciously hitting the record button on my voice memo app when I got out of the car because I was so nervous about what I was seeing. I'm calling the police, I said. Go ahead, Brianna said with a smirk. We'll just tell them this is a family matter. Mom and Dad gave us permission to be here. They don't own this house. I do. Prove it, my mom said coldly. That's when I realized they thought they were calling my bluff. They actually believed they could just take my house and I'd roll over and accept it. They had no idea that I'd been recording everything and that I had lawyers on speed dial thanks to my job. I walked to my car, got in, and immediately called my lawyer, Elijah Grant. Elijah handles corporate legal matters for my company, but he also does some personal legal work on the side and has become a friend over the years. He's sharp, ruthless when he needs to be, and he does not like bullies. Elijah, I need your help. My family just broke into my house and changed the locks. They're trying to steal it. What? Haley, slow down. Tell me everything. I told him the whole story while sitting in my car in my own driveway, watching my family move their belongings into my house. Elijah was quiet for a long moment after I finished. Haley, do you have any proof of this conversation? Actually, yes. I have a recording of the entire thing. My phone was recording when I came home and caught them. Send it to me right now. Don't delete it, don't edit it, just send it. How long is it? I checked my phone. About 12 minutes. Perfect. Are they still in the house? Yes, they're still moving stuff in. Good. Don't engage with them anymore. I'm calling the police right now and then I'm coming over. This is breaking and entering, burglary, and possibly conspiracy. Your family just committed multiple felonies. Really? Really? They broke into your house, changed your locks, and are stealing your property. The fact that their family doesn't matter. The fact that they planned this makes it worse. While I waited for Elijah and the police, I called my boss, Jennifer, and explained the situation. She was horrified and immediately told me to take the rest of the week off. She also connected me with the company's security team because apparently, this kind of thing can sometimes escalate to workplace harassment. The police arrived first, 2 officers who looked like they'd seen this kind of family drama before. I showed them my ID, my backup mortgage documents from my car, and played them the recording. Their expressions changed from skeptical to disgusted as they listened to my family's words. Ma'am, this is pretty clear-cut, Officer Aaron Blake said. They've committed breaking and entering, burglary, and conspiracy. The recording makes it an easy case. When Elijah arrived, he was in full lawyer mode. He's usually pretty laid back, but when he's angry, he's terrifying. He listened to the recording again, shaking his head. This is one of the most clear-cut cases I've ever seen, he said. They're not just stealing your house, they're trying to extort you into giving it up. The police knocked on my door, and I watched through the window as my family's faces changed from smug to confused to panicked. Brianna tried to argue with the officers, but they weren't having it. We have a recording of you admitting to breaking and entering and changing the locks on a house that doesn't belong to you," Officer Aaron Blake said. "You need to gather your belongings and leave immediately." "But she's family. This is a family matter." My mom protested. "Ma'am, burglary is burglary, regardless of family relationships. You have 10 minutes to get your things and leave, or you'll be arrested." I watched my dad's face turn pale as the reality of the situation hit him. "We just thought we were helping." "By stealing someone's house?" Officer Sean Adler asked. "Ma'am, we need you to step outside so we can speak with you." That's when they arrested my parents and Brianna. Troy wasn't arrested because he apparently hadn't been part of the planning, he'd just been told by Brianna that they were house sitting for me. The kids were confused and crying, which broke my heart despite everything. Natalie, who was mature for her 10 years, seemed to understand that something was very wrong, while Owen clung to his father in confusion. Elijah worked quickly to get emergency custody of the kids placed with Troy's parents until the situation was resolved. Child Services was involved, but Elijah managed to keep it from becoming a huge mess for the children. Over the next few days, the full extent of their plan came to light. They had been planning this for over a month. My mom had been secretly making copies of my spare key. They had found a studio apartment they wanted to force me into and had even put down a deposit. Brianna had been telling people in the neighborhood that I was letting them move in. They had planned to sell some of my furniture and belongings to help pay for their moving expenses. The worst part? They had been planning to legally challenge my ownership of the house, claiming that since I was single and didn't need the space, it should go to Brianna's family. They had actually consulted with a lawyer about this, though the lawyer had apparently told them it would never work. Elijah filed restraining orders against all three of them. The criminal charges were serious: breaking and entering, burglary, conspiracy, and attempted theft. The DA's office was particularly interested in the premeditated nature of the crime and the recording of them admitting to it. My parents tried to reach out through other family members, claiming they were just trying to help and that I was overreacting. My Uncle Tom called me, trying to play peacemaker. "Haley, they're family. Maybe you could drop the charges and work this out?" "Tom, they broke into my house and tried to steal it. If a stranger had done this, would you tell me to work it out?" "But they're not strangers, they're your parents." "That makes it worse, not better. They used my trust against me." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, police reports, and family drama that I never could have imagined. Elijah worked tirelessly to build our case, and what we discovered during the investigation was even more shocking than the original incident. It turns out that my parents and Brianna had been planning this for much longer than I'd realized. Elijah's investigator, a former police detective named Nicole Travers, uncovered a paper trail that showed just how calculated their actions had been. 3 months before the incident, my parents had opened a joint bank account with Brianna, depositing $5,000 as a moving fund. They had researched the legal process for challenging property ownership and had even consulted with a lawyer about claiming adverse possession of my house. The lawyer had told them it would never work, but they'd apparently decided to try the direct approach instead. Nicole also found text messages between my parents and Brianna that were absolutely damning. Messages like, "Haley's at work, perfect time to make copies of the key, and once we're in, she'll have to accept it. What's she going to do? Call the cops on family." The level of premeditation was staggering. But the most shocking discovery came when Nicole interviewed my neighbors. Mrs. Patterson told her that Brianna had been driving by my house for weeks, sometimes parking across the street and just watching. My neighbor across the street, Mr. Kim, said Brianna had approached him 2 weeks before the incident, asking about my daily routine and when I usually left for work. She said she was planning a surprise for her sister, Mr. Kim told Nicole. "I thought it was sweet. Now I realize she was casing the joint." The criminal charges were filed quickly. Breaking and entering, burglary, conspiracy, trespassing, and attempted theft. The DA's office was particularly interested in the case because of the recording and the clear evidence of premeditation. During this time, my extended family started taking sides. My mother's sister, Aunt Carol, initially tried to play peacemaker, calling me to suggest that we work things out as a family. But when I played her the recording, she was horrified. "Kathleen, what have you done?" she asked my mother during a confrontation that my cousin Lisa later told me about. "You raised Haley to be independent and successful, and now you're punishing her for it?" My father's brother, Uncle Jim, was even more direct. He called my dad and apparently shouted at him for 20 minutes about bringing shame on the family name. Uncle Jim had always been proud of my career success and had often bragged about his genius niece to his friends. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks after the incident. Elijah advised me to be prepared for my family to paint me as the villain, but I was still shocked by what happened. Brianna's lawyer, a public defender named Thomas Wright, tried to argue that this was a family misunderstanding and that Brianna had reasonably believed she had permission to be in the house. But when Elijah played the recording in court, you could see the judge's expression change. Your Honor, Elijah said, addressing Judge Evelyn Brooks, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a coordinated effort to steal my client's home through intimidation and illegal entry. When Judge Hendricks heard Brianna's voice on the recording saying finally, I'm living in the house I should have always had, she shook her head in disgust. Ms. Patterson, the judge said to Brianna, you're telling this court that you believed you had permission to break into someone else's home and change the locks? Brianna's lawyer tried to interrupt, but the judge held up her hand. I want to hear from the defendant herself. Brianna stood up, looking nervous for the first time through this whole ordeal. Your Honor, my parents told me it was okay. They said Haley would understand because we needed the space more than she did. Did you ask Haley for permission? No, but did you have any written agreement giving you the right to enter the property? No, but we're family, and, Ms. Patterson, family relationships don't override property law. You broke into someone's home and changed the locks. That's burglary, regardless of your relationship to the victim. My parents' lawyer, an older man named Frank Morrison, who I think they scraped together their savings to hire, tried to argue that they were acting in their daughter's best interests, and that they never intended to permanently deprive her of the property. Judge Hendricks was having none of it. Mr. Morrison, your clients changed the locks on a house that doesn't belong to them and told the rightful owner she could have a studio apartment instead. How is that not attempting to permanently deprive her of her property? The hearing ended with all three of them being bound over for trial. Bail was set at $10,000 each, which my parents managed to scrape together by borrowing against their own house. Brianna had to stay in jail because Troy refused to post her bail. During the weeks leading up to the trial, the story started spreading through our community. My parents had been active in their church, and when the story came out, several members of the congregation were shocked and disappointed. Mrs. Henderson, who had known my parents for 15 years, called me personally to apologize for their behavior. I can't believe Kathleen and Douglas would do such a thing, she said. I've watched you grow up in that church, and I've always been so proud of your accomplishments. What they did was wrong, plain and simple. The pastor, Father Michael, apparently had a serious conversation with my parents about their actions. According to my cousin Lisa, who still attended that church, Father Michael had expressed his disappointment and suggested they seek counseling and make amends. Pride goeth before a fall, he had apparently told them. You've let your pride and jealousy lead you to sin against your own daughter. Meanwhile, I was dealing with my own emotional aftermath. Despite everything, these were still my parents and my sister. I found myself going through stages of grief, anger, sadness, bargaining, and slowly working toward acceptance. My therapist, Dr. Lauren Harlow, helped me understand that my feelings were completely normal. It's natural to grieve the loss of the family relationship you thought you had, she told me. You're mourning the parents you believed they were and the sister you thought you could trust. The therapy sessions were incredibly helpful. Dr. Lauren Blake helped me understand that my parents' actions weren't really about the house, they were about control and their inability to accept that I had become successful independent of them. In healthy families, parents are proud when their children exceed their expectations, she explained. In dysfunctional families, parents sometimes feel threatened by their children's success because it highlights their own failures or limitations. During this time, I also started receiving messages from extended family members who had been hearing my parents' version of events. My cousin Mark called me, confused and concerned. Haley, your mom told my mom that you were being selfish and that they were just trying to help Brianna's kids. But something didn't sound right about the story. I sent Mark the transcript of the recording, and his response was swift and supportive. Holy shit, Haley. I had no idea it was this bad. I'm so sorry. My mom is going to flip when she hears the real story. And flip she did. My Aunt Susan, Mark's mother, called my parents immediately after Mark told her the truth. Kathleen, I defended you to my book club last week and now I find out you lied to me? I heard about this call from Susan herself, who called to apologize to me. I told those ladies that Haley was being unreasonable, and now I have to go back and tell them the truth. I'm mortified. The ripple effects continued to spread. My parents' neighbors started treating them differently once the story got out. Mr. Leonard Chase, who lived next door to them, told me later that he had always thought my parents were good people but that their actions had completely changed his opinion. If they could do that to their own daughter, what else are they capable of? He asked me when I ran into him at the grocery store months later. Brianna's situation was getting worse by the day. Troy had filed for divorce and was seeking full custody of the kids. He had also moved back in with his parents, taking the children with him. Brianna was living with a friend, but that arrangement was getting strained. Troy called me about a month after the incident. He was clearly embarrassed and upset. Haley, I need you to know that I had no idea what Brianna was planning. She told me you had agreed to let us house sit while you were out of town. I never would have gone along with it if I'd known the truth. I believe you, Troy. I'm sorry you and the kids got caught up in this. I'm filing for divorce. I can't trust her anymore, and I can't have the kids around someone who would do something like this. But I wanted to ask you something. What? Would you be willing to write a character reference for me for the custody hearing? I know it's a lot to ask, but the kids love you, and I think your perspective on Brianna's behavior might help the judge understand why I need to protect them. I agreed to write the letter. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever written, but I felt I owed it to the kids to be honest about their mother's actions. In the letter, I described Brianna's behavior, her lack of remorse, and her willingness to use her own children as pawns in her scheme. The letter worked. Troy got full custody, and Brianna was limited to supervised visits. The kids were devastated, but they were also old enough to understand that their mother had done something very wrong. Natalie, the oldest, called me a few weeks later. Aunt Haley, I'm sorry my mom tried to steal your house. I know you worked really hard for it. That call broke my heart. These kids were suffering because of their mother's choices, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. The trial finally began 6 weeks after the incident. The prosecution had a strong case, with the recording, the physical evidence, and testimony from neighbors who had witnessed suspicious behavior. Elijah had prepared me thoroughly for my testimony. Just tell the truth, he said. The recording speaks for itself, but the jury needs to hear from you about the impact this had on your life. When I took the stand, I was nervous but determined. The prosecutor, Ada Claire Weston, walked me through the events of that day, and I could see the jury's reactions as I described coming home to find my family had broken into my house. How did you feel when you realized what had happened? Ada Weston asked. Violated. Betrayed. I felt like my entire world had been turned upside down. These were the people I was supposed to trust most, and they had broken into my home and tried to steal it from me. The defense tried to paint me as vindictive and unforgiving, but the recording made their job nearly impossible. How do you argue with someone's own words? Brianna's lawyer tried to claim she was manipulated by my parents, but Brianna's own voice on the recording, saying finally, "I'm living in the house I should have always had," contradicted that narrative. My parents' lawyer tried to argue that they were misguided but not criminal. Judge Hendricks wasn't buying it. Mr. Morrison, your clients admitted on tape that they changed the locks on a house that doesn't belong to them and told the rightful owner she would have to accept a studio apartment instead. That's not misguided, that's felony burglary. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts for all 3 defendants. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for the following week. Elijah advised me to prepare a victim impact statement, which would be read during sentencing. Writing that statement was therapeutic and painful at the same time. I wrote about the violation of trust, the damage to my sense of security, and the loss of family relationships. But I also wrote about my determination to move forward and not let their actions define my life. At the sentencing hearing, I read my statement aloud. My parents and Brianna sat at the defendant's table, looking smaller and more defeated than I'd ever seen them. Your Honor, the defendants didn't just try to steal my house, they tried to steal my sense of security and my ability to trust the people closest to me. They showed me that they were willing to commit crimes to get what they wanted, and they showed no remorse until they were caught. I will carry the impact of their actions for the rest of my life. Judge Hendricks sentenced my parents to 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and restitution for the damages. Brianna, as the primary instigator, got 6 months in jail and 3 years probation. But the real revenge was just beginning. The case moved quickly. With the recording and the physical evidence, their lawyers advised them to take a plea deal. My parents ended up with 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and had to pay restitution for the locks they changed and the damage to my property. Brianna got a harsher sentence, 6 months in jail and 3 years probation, because she was the primary instigator. But the real revenge came later. During the investigation, we discovered that my parents had been telling extended family, neighbors, and friends that I was selfish and ungrateful, and that they were helping me by teaching me a lesson. They had painted themselves as the victims of an ungrateful daughter who had more than she deserved. Elijah and I decided to set the record straight. We sent a detailed letter to everyone in our extended family, along with a transcript of the recording. We explained exactly what had happened, with evidence, and made it clear that my parents and Brianna had committed felonies. The response was swift and brutal. My grandmother Rose's sister, Aunt Margaret, called my parents and absolutely tore them apart. She told them they were a dismay to the family name and that they should be ashamed of themselves. She also told them that Grandma Rose would be spinning in her grave if she knew what they'd done. My cousins, who had been hearing my parents' version of events, were horrified when they learned the truth. Several of them reached out to apologize for believing the lies and to express their support for me. The neighbors were equally disgusted. Mrs. Patterson, who lives next door, told me she'd thought it was strange when Brianna had introduced herself as the new owner but had assumed I'd sold the house. When she learned the truth, she was appalled. "I can't believe your own family would do that to you," she said. "You're such a sweet girl, and you worked so hard for that house." The social consequences were devastating for my parents and Brianna. They became pariahs in their social circles. People who had known them for years stopped talking to them. Brianna's kids were old enough to understand that their mom had done something very wrong, which caused problems at school and in their social lives. Troy divorced Brianna while she was in jail. He got full custody of the kids and moved back to his hometown with his parents. He sent me a letter apologizing for his wife's actions and thanking me for making sure the kids were taken care of during the crisis. My parents lost several friendships and had to leave their church because of the scandal. My dad's business, he runs a small construction company, lost several clients who didn't want to work with someone who had tried to steal his daughter's house. But the most satisfying revenge was yet to come. About a year after the incident, I got a call from a real estate agent. Apparently, my parents were trying to sell their house because they couldn't afford the legal fees and the restitution payments. They were facing foreclosure and needed to downsize quickly. Through Elijah, I made an offer on their house. It was significantly below market value, but given their financial situation and the fact that they needed to sell quickly, they didn't have much choice. I bought my parents' house. Then I turned it into a rental property. I hired a property management company to handle it, and I rented out to a nice family with young children. The rental income more than covers the mortgage, and I'm building equity in a second property. My parents had to move into a small apartment across town. It's not a bad place, but it's a far cry from the house they lived in for 20 years. Every month, they see the rental income from their former home going into my account. Brianna, when she got out of jail, had to move in with a friend because she couldn't afford her own place. She tried to get a job, but the criminal record made it difficult. She eventually found work at a fast food restaurant, making barely enough to get by. The extended family fallout continued for months. My parents were excluded from family gatherings, and Brianna became the subject of whispered conversations at family events. My cousin Mark's wedding was particularly awkward. My parents weren't invited, and when people asked why, the story came out again. A year later, my parents tried to reach out through my Aunt Margaret. They wanted to reconcile and put this behind us. They claimed they had learned their lesson and just wanted their daughter back. I agreed to meet with them, but only with Elijah present and only in his office. They came in looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen them. My mom had clearly been crying, and my dad looked defeated. "Haley, we're sorry," my mom said. "We made a mistake. We just wanted to help Brianna, and we thought. You thought you could steal my house and I'd just accept it," I finished. "It wasn't stealing," my dad said weakly. "We just thought you'd understand once you saw how much the family needed it. By breaking into my house and changing the locks without my permission. That's the definition of stealing. We're your parents," my mom said. "We raised you. We thought that meant something." It did mean something. That's why this hurts so much. If strangers had done this, I would have expected it. But you're my parents. You were supposed to protect me, not try to steal from me. They sat there in silence for a long moment. Finally, my dad spoke up. "What do you want from us, Haley? What can we do to fix this? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You didn't just try to steal my house, you tried to destroy my sense of security and my trust in family. That's not something you can just apologize away." "So that's it? You're never going to forgive us?" my mom asked. "I might forgive you someday. But I'll never forget what you did, and I'll never trust you again. You showed me exactly who you are when you think you can get away with it." They left that day looking broken, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sadness, just emptiness. They had made their choice, and now they were living with the consequences. 2 years later, here's where things stand. I still live in my beautiful house. I've made some improvements, new hardwood floors, a renovated kitchen, and a gorgeous garden. It's my sanctuary, and I've never been happier living there. Brianna is still struggling. She's bounced between jobs and apartments, and she's only allowed supervised visits with her kids. Troy remarried, a lovely woman who treats the kids well, and they're all much happier without Brianna's drama. My parents are still in their small apartment. They've aged rapidly over the past 2 years, and I sometimes wonder if the stress and shame contributed to their health problems. My dad's business never fully recovered, and he's had to let go of most of his employees. The extended family has mostly moved on, but the story still comes up at family gatherings. I've become closer to my cousins and aunts, who have been incredibly supportive. They've told me that my parents' actions opened their eyes to some behaviors they've been ignoring for years. I've been in therapy, working through the trust issues and family trauma. My therapist says I handled the situation remarkably well, considering the circumstances. She's helped me understand that my parents' actions weren't about the house, they were about control and their belief that they could manipulate me into doing what they wanted. The house that was supposed to be stolen from me became the foundation of a new life. I'm happier, more independent, and more confident in my boundaries. I've started dating again. There's a great guy named Alex who thinks my handling of the situation was badass, and I'm considering the possibility of a family someday. But if I do have a family, it will be built on respect, trust, and genuine love. Not on manipulation, theft, and guilt. My parents and Brianna made their choice when they decided to try to steal my house. They thought they could get away with it because I was just their daughter/sister, and family would always forgive family. They were wrong. The recording that saved me still exists, backed up in multiple locations. It's a reminder that actions have consequences, and that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who will hurt you the deepest. But it's also a reminder that I'm stronger than I ever thought I was, and that I don't have to accept abuse just because it comes from family. The house is still mine. The family that tried to steal it is still paying the price. And I'm still standing, stronger than ever. Justice, as it turns out, is a dish best served with proper legal documentation and a really good lawyer. Update: thank you all for the support and the awards. A few people have asked about Troy and the kids. They're doing well. Troy sends me Christmas cards every year, and the kids are thriving in their new life. Brianna is still struggling, but that's a consequence of her choices, not mine. I don't take pleasure in her suffering, but I don't feel guilty about it either. Actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences last a lifetime. To everyone saying I should have just worked it out, they broke into my house and tried to steal it. There is no working out felony burglary. Family doesn't mean you get to commit crimes without consequences. And yes, I still live in the house. It's beautiful, I love it, and I earned it. No one is taking it from me ever again.